Right, Flex, let's talk about your club, Manchester United. Before we do, the big news recently for them is that they've finally taken the man with the best garden in the business, Dan Ashworth, from Newcastle United to Manchester United as their new sporting director. Flex, you seem so excited by this appointment. I genuinely think you're going to be outside Carrington.
No.
With Dan Ashworth, can I have your shirt?
No.
A little sign.
You're making things up. No,
Yeah,
you're making things up.
Why are you so excited about this?
No, I'm excited about the future of Man United in terms of just having a footballing structure and us being given what we've asked for. This Man United are supposed to have this. Like, as a club the size of Man United is supposed to have people in the right positions who are specialists in their field, and there is a plan to follow. So I'm excited at the fact that for far too long Manchester United has not had this department, has not had the right appointments made. I'm excited that Sir Jim Ratcliffe, from being ratified for owning the club in the way that he does, from February to now, about 5 or 6 months, has managed to rip out the old regime, build a new one. And just with Dan Ashworth, it was obviously dragging on a long time. 20 million we need to give, etc., etc. It hasn't been disclosed exactly what the fee is, but I know it's not going to be 20 million. We was going to go to the Court of Arbitration, mate, because we're not paying that. You can carry on cutting hedges for a week here. 20 million.
The way the Man United were talking about that was silly. Come on, it was.
It was silly that you wanted 20 million, yeah.
No, why? Why? If you rate him so highly and he's so key to Manchester United and exactly what you need, why is that wrong of Newcastle United to demand that money?
Because that's not what he's worth.
No, he hasn't.
And that's why we didn't pay it. And that's why you didn't. That's why you didn't get it.
Hold on, you're unbelievably excited about him, and he's exactly what Man United need.
Yeah.
But you don't have to pay that much money for it.
No. Do you know what it is? Do you know what I really like? Gone are the days where Man United will just pay whatever someone says and make bad decisions. And this is what's really interesting for me.
But you just said it's a good decision.
Yeah, it's a good decision to get Dan Ashworth. But I'm saying it's a good decision not to pay 20 million for him.
But you just said that it would be a bad decision to pay 20 million for someone that you need.
Yeah, because the sporting director shouldn't cost that much. You're taking the mick. Us Newcastle tried to take the mick, and we said no, we're not paying that.
Yeah, well,
we didn't.
You paid more than the 3 million.
Absolutely, but not as much as, and guess what? That's what negotiation is. Manchester United have absolutely gone in there.
There's nothing wrong with Newcastle trying to demand a fee.
They can try, absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with Man United saying we're not budging on this. So he's there cutting hedges. You're still paying him, and we're not. There you go.
It's funny though with Dan Ashworth, isn't it? Because if we talk about his legacy for a bit, everywhere that he's been, let's start with him at England, where he tried to implement this England DNA and got their youth teams winning a lot. And actually, when you look at how successful that's been, I know England haven't won anything, fingers crossed.
But the reason why they're favourites is we're looking at all the players now and going, look.
Yeah, and we've seen the success from some of those youth teams as well. And people give Gareth Southgate a lot of credit for the way that he's rebuilt that faith in England and rebuilt that culture of England being incredibly important. I think Dan Ashworth was a big part of that. Brighton, I think you can call him a big success as well with the way that their transfers went and plucking gems out of nowhere. And I think, again, he was a key part of that. Newcastle's an interesting one because actually, as much as he did do some good things over those 18 months, and I'm speaking as a fan, of course, as well, the legacy that Dan Ashworth actually leaves, and I really, it's easy to look at this as me being a fan and being a bit bitter about it.
Yeah.
But seriously, the legacy he leaves is signing Sandro Tonali, where the due diligence wasn't done, and that ended up being a disastrous signing. Now we do have Tonali now, and I'm very much.
You're not going to be saying that this season, are you?
Well, no, I'm not, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing him as a player.
Yeah.
But had Newcastle known about what was going on, they wouldn't have signed him.
Well, doing a bit of digging into actually how he was at Newcastle, I spoke to Keith Downey as well, just to get a better perspective, and a couple of Newcastle fans, because we do have to do that. It isn't like, he's the reason single-handedly why Newcastle have, done so well, and he's brought in Isak, he's brought in Botman, he's probably had a hand in these things, but I was reading and was informed that actually one of the things he did do at Newcastle is actually make sure he doesn't do a lot. If you get what I mean, kind of let the other people who are at Newcastle make those decisions as well. And that is what I'm talking about why it's important to have somebody like Dan Ashworth. To be honest, we can have the banter about how we took him from you, etc., because it's great. But to be honest,
it's such a 2024 football fan argument, isn't it?
It's brilliant, because, mate, as soon
so
as I had Newcastle fans at me on, so give us our 20 million, this, that. So I become quite tribal. You're not getting 20 million out of us.
What's so funny as well, like the big song between Man U and Newcastle fans is about Shearer, isn't it? Like, Shearer, turn you down.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, we've got Ashworth.
We've got Super Danny Ashworth.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's crazy.
It's going to be the Ashworth derby.
Yeah, it is, the Dan Ashworth derby.
I honestly, I am less excited about like this one appointment and, oh my God, Dan Ashworth is going to fix everything, and more excited that it's the final piece of a structure that we've created. That's
another addition.
Do you see what I mean? And to see like the scrutiny and some of like the people outside the Man United fan base sort of having a laugh, and it just shows me that like Man United are so hated. It reminds me, like you got to remember, Man United were told, right, which we know, look at them, they've got no clue, they've got no football people, the people been rotting the club, look at the Glazers, they've got not a clue in that whole club. So we got it all out in reference to that, to do better and make an environment that's conducive to help us win. And now it's, oh, they've got this guy, they think just because they got the guy from City or just because they got that. No, we're just happy that now we have a footballing structure. Now we need to allow it to work and be patient and see what it can do. But the future looks bright.
How does it make you feel about the managerial situation? Because that now feels, for me, a bit like the bad smell that's still lingering in a lot of ways, because last season was a disaster, wasn't it, with Erik ten Hag? I know you won the trophy and he's won 2 trophies, all that, but they came 8th. It's their lowest finish in the Premier League. Yeah. Is there any sense of you that just feels like, you say that Dan Ashworth's the last piece of the puzzle, do you actually think that over, with a bit of time, actually the last piece of the puzzle is going to be the manager?
There's always a possibility of that, and that's why it's so important that Man United needed to restructure above, so it doesn't matter who the manager is. That's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of a structure. Brighton do it, City when Pep leaves, Klopp when he's just gone. The structure is there, and it's so present that whichever manager comes in, they have the environment to deliver. So if that means that Erik ten Hag doesn't do too well over the next year and a half, then of course it's a results business. He's about to sign a new deal. And what we're being told in reports is that he still has transfer veto. His power hasn't been just revoked, and now he's just this puppet who is just going to be told what plays, going to rock up to Carrington. Here's 2 new players that you don't have a clue about. Because also, it's not going to work. He has to have some level He has to because he's the manager. But what we can clearly see is that because there is a structure, the way that the players are going to be bought and the voices around the table, and we're already seeing with some of the business it's looking like we're going to do, we're not just going to pay astronomical fees and be struggling afterwards.
We're going to hear from Rennie Millenstein in just a moment. I just want to ask you one thing on that, though, that you mentioned there, that, OK, Ten Hag's going to keep his power. So what? So you're going to have Dan Ashworth come in as the sporting director. Parada, OK, is a bit more the business side. He's the CEO. He's going to do other deals, but he's going to be involved in those deals for players. Jason Wilcox is also in there. Are you not a bit worried that there's so many directors now that are going to be treading on each other's toes?
No, because I feel like that's how modern day football is. That's at every club we've just discussed. At City, they have this level of decision makers. At Liverpool, this is what's there. At Brighton, this is what's there. At Arsenal, this is what modern day football is. And modern day managers should and do understand that is how business is conducted. You have a say, but also the people who make decisions will also have their say, and will come to a general consensus around that. Not just you going, get me every single player from Holland, or get me this player, or get me that, and then there's no pushback. So it's the modern day structure, and I'm pleased we've finally caught up.
Let's hear from one of the former assistants at Old Trafford, Rennie Millenstein. He was asked if he was surprised, and we were talking about Ten Hag just now. He was asked if he was surprised that it took Man United so long to come to the decision to keep him.
Why are you doing a review? You're doing a review because you want to find out whether carrying on in the same way warrants success for the future. That's why you're doing a review. And in the same review, they've already spoken to other candidates. So that doesn't add up to me. When you do a review and you come to the conclusion it doesn't warrant what we want for the future, you then say, thank you very much, but we're going to look somewhere else.
Yep.
Now, they have looked somewhere else, and for whatever reason, I don't know what the content of the meeting has been with Tuchel, but probably they've discussed about what the situation is, the club, the transfer budget, and Tuchel must have thought, hold on a minute, ooh, not sure I like that, so no, I'm out. I'm not doing it. So they got back. Now we better carry on with Eric. So it looks a little bit like, they're kicking the can down the street. Obviously, things are changing in terms of the setup, in terms of the staff, as we know. He's brought in René Hake, he worked with at Utrecht and who's a friend of his. And obviously, there's the rumours that Ruud van Nistelrooy might join.
I think that will happen.
So there might be new faces, in it. But,
Yeah.
I think they need to really have a good look and say, okay, how can it be? And yes, he won the cup, he won the FA Cup, and he won a trophy last year. But the key is, again, culture, identity, style of play. And then you add all that up. And that is the disappointing thing for me, what I saw in most of the games, and a lot of games, that you don't really see the United we want to see.
Well, there we go. René Meulensteen saying they're kicking the can down the road with keeping Erik ten Hag. And actually, he's disappointed because the one thing now that Manchester United need is that style and hoping for that, and that's not going to come with Ten Hag. What do you think of that?
The thing is that it's all down to interpretation, as René Meulensteen basically just said. He said, well, I wasn't in those meetings, but it seems to me as this. That's all anyone can really say, unless it's coming from the horse's mouth of the people who were in that. Because I posed to René Meulensteen, why can't it be that they looked at Thomas Tuchel, because he's interviewing for a potential new post, and went, you're actually not really for us, actually. I think actually after 12 months you might become a bit problematic, actually. If you do a review as well, for me, if you do a review, you want to explore all your options. I think. It hasn't worked. Something is not right. As Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said, as soon as he come into the club, it's not just about one manager. Manchester United has been failing since Sir Alex Ferguson left. True or not true?
Yeah, of course they have.
And they've gone through a host of coaches, they've gone through a host of players, and a host of transfer budget. So it cannot just be the same thing again of, we just need to change one guy and it'll be fine. It's bigger than that, which is why we're seeing a complete structural reset, which is why we're seeing, I believe, why we're seeing Erik ten Hag given the chance to flourish in this new structural reset. I think they've sounded out De Zerbi, they've sounded out Thomas Tuchel, they've sounded out whoever else. Gareth Southgate was apparently on the list. They've sounded out whoever they've sounded out, and come to the conclusion that the guy they think has the best chance of moving forward under the structure.
That's your interpretation of what's happening.
But that's my point. So but there seems to be this overwhelming outside of Manchester, because a lot of Manchester United fans are happy Erik ten Hag stayed, but everybody from outside the club who's criticising the fact that Manchester United decided to keep him, it's, well, they just couldn't afford to pay Tuchel, or Tuchel just turned him down. I just think that's lazy, personally.
It's funny because you mentioned that Sir Jim Ratcliffe there, and he was actually interviewed in this very building about keeping Erik ten Hag as well, and he firstly said that when he arrived at Manchester United there were a lot of bad surprises. I don't think that's surprising in itself, but when he was talking about the managerial situation, he actually said, almost quite similar to you there, that since Ferguson none of these managers have worked, and some of them have been very good managers. So it can't be all based on that, and actually there were a lot of other things that needed to change within the club. So actually, do you think that they have got themselves a good coach to cling on to that can take them to the top? It's just that everything else around them needs to change.
This is my personal opinion. I think that Ineos have led to more down the path of the environment isn't right for anybody to flourish here. Let's get the environment right. We've got a guy here who, by hook or by crook, has won 2 trophies, done some good things, some bad things. Let's see what he can do if we give him a proper structure and some decent backing. Now, if Ten Hag fails this season, of course, he's going to get sacked. Like, he can sign a new deal all he wants. If Erik ten Hag by Christmas is, 10, 15 points off top 4 and we're in a minus goal difference still and we can't score goals, or, if it carries on, he will get sacked. Ollie Gunnar Solskjaer signed a new deal before he got sacked. So did Jose Mourinho. It's a results business. So I don't think we should be too hung up on the fact that they've decided to keep him. Me personally, I just think with all the turmoil that's been at Manchester United, I think they've decided to change everything around the manager and see how he does.
Interesting stuff. I'm very much looking forward to
and he's going to do great.
Yeah. I can't wait for the Dan Ashworth derby, mate. I'm buzzing for that.
Yeah, you be ready.